Hello there, welcome to everyone again back here for the In Out crowd. As you can see there behind me, it's nice to see you all again. For those watching on Facebook who we can't see, it's equally nice to have you here, and a big shout out to everyone joining. Whilst lockdown restrictions are starting to ease, we are still going to be here on Facebook Live/Zoom every 2 Monday nights, so every second week from 7 o'clock. We're just going to be having a chat about all things rainbow that we enjoy and love. Now, even though the end might be in sight, it's not quite in our grasp just yet. Even though you can still get a Big Mac and 6 shots of tequila whenever you fancy, it seems like spaces such as community settings and dance studios, which is where the In Out crowd would normally be held if we were allowed in real life, it means that we are going to have to remain on digital terms for the foreseeable future. And this is due to the nature of heavy breathing in terms of spreading certain things. Although I'm sure anyone here who's been to a pub before may contest that no one breathes heavier than someone who's had one too many seltzers telling you how much prettier you are when you smile. Although there are a few people that always make us smile, and that is part of our studio audience. So if I can get everyone in the studio audience, give a wee wave, just so I can see you. There we go. And I'm just going to come to Anna. How are you feeling tonight? Are you feeling like a ray of light, or are you still making it through the wilderness?
I am, yeah, kind of in the mix. I'm in a very different situation because I'm in Sweden, so society's a bit more open, and that helps a lot with everything that's going on.
Definitely, that's exactly what we want to hear. With that, I think it's time that during this session we talk about some things that we are really proud to be part of, be that in a country, in a space where we feel open and free, or be it for people who really inspire us to live our true, authentic selves. And that is time for our critique of the week. So passing over then. So with the critique of the week this week, we are looking at the new documentary on BBC iPlayer all about the artist Keith Haring. The documentary is called Street Art Boy, and with us tonight is another artistic boy, man, male, who is very inspired by Keith Haring's work and is somewhat of an enthusiast. I would use the word expert personally, Jay, but I'm going to pass over now to one of our special guests, Jay Allen, who is going to talk about the documentary and about Keith Haring in general. So are you there, Jay? Hello.
Hello. I've got my Keith Haring t-shirt on, a definite enthusiast. I think watching the documentary, I think it's something quite different. It's really interesting to see his life from a different perspective. The documentary opens and the first quote that you hear is 90% of people in the subway will have never been to the Museum of Modern Art. And I think that's something that really resonates with pop art in general, but mostly with Keith Haring's work in the subway. So it was so accessible for everybody to see, whether you're passing and you just happen to get a glimpse of it, or you go to this, when he started to become a notoriety, you go to the subway to see this work specifically. And I think accessibility is really important in the world of art. I feel like artists coming from working class backgrounds can often have a harder time getting into the creative industries, and it's nice to see. So one thing that really jumped out was when Keith was speaking about his influence and how influenced he was by Black culture. I think it really resonates as well with the idea of the queer community and intersectionality within the queer community. But then he also jumped back to say, this is the reason that I used chalk to draw, because although I draw my inspiration from the queer community, it's still having a sensitivity with not wanting to force himself into spaces built by people of colour and for people of colour. So that really resonates with the idea of the queer community as well as his art. It's nice to see. It was nice to see the idea of his family, because I think that's something that you don't always get to see, and I think it had a big impact on his work. Last year I went down to see his first ever UK exhibition. It was in the Tate in Liverpool, and I remember seeing things that I've never seen, portraits of his that I've never seen before. And it's fabulous how to see his work taken in so many directions, from the pop shop to collaborations with Vivienne Westwood to people who can only get into exhibitions in a club space. Not to mention the work that he's done for ACT UP. His whole ACT UP movement, silence equals death, I think it's still so important. He was someone who spoke very openly about the AIDS crisis, and at the time was shunned from the celebrity eye, or shunned from the eye of Hollywood that he built himself up to be in. But I think silence equals death is still such a slogan for the HIV awareness. Today, when you talk about U equals U, untransmittable, it's still it's awareness, and it comes from that idea as silence equals death. So I really enjoyed the documentary, and it took you through his whole life, which is lovely to see.
Yeah, definitely. Just in case anyone's not aware, Jay, could you give us a little just brief description of what ACT UP is, just in case anyone's not heard of it before? So
ACT UP is his foundation that he started. It's a part of the Keith Haring Foundation, really raising money for AIDS. It was originally AIDS awareness, and now it's HIV prevention and awareness. And I think he raised something like 20 million for HIV prevention and awareness. Amazing. When you're chatting there about accessibility within art, I did do a little bit of research myself, because I knew I had an enthusiast in the room, and I just wanted to kind of throw this open to the studio audience here. So this was a quote from www.haring.com. Now, apologies, it is Haring. I'm from Glasgow, where it's the whole Charing Cross. We can never decide, so apologies for that. So the quote that's on the website is, "Using primacy of line and directness of message, Haring was able to attract a wide audience and assure accessibility and staying power of his imagery." And just when you're chatting there, Jay, about accessibility in the arts, I know that people that I know in the studio audience here, and some folks that are watching, are from a working class background. I'd just like to throw it open to the studio audience, regardless of what background you're from. Do you have any thoughts on accessibility of art, be it dance or portraits or paintings?
Absolutely, yeah. In terms of accessibility, like a lot of these spaces, they are built to reflect grandeur. So if you're going to see a ballet, it will be in a very large, grand building. And the theatres, they are some of the most expensive buildings to run in the country. That's why it's so devastating that they can't be making money from ticket sales right now. And like a lot of working class people, like they don't see themselves represented as being able to go into those spaces. Like I know friends of mine who have only ever come to see work that I've put on, and like that's their kind of limit of theatre. And I know people who have also said that they weren't quite sure where they belonged in spaces like that. And sometimes people don't even know that art galleries are free for everyone to go into, and they've never been into one. So making work available in spaces that are already familiar to people, especially considering class, is so massively important, I think, to making work for everyone, because you can put on a working class play in a big grand theatre, and middle class people, for the majority, are going to be the ones who go along and see it, and they'll be like, oh, that was a very good play about working class issues, I'm really glad that got put on. But the people that it impacts won't necessarily, they won't have got the benefit from that.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Emma. Anyone else have any thoughts to share and add? And it's okay if you don't.
I think it comes down to often the idea of, especially with dance or art, I think it can be said that it's more middle class people who are able to go study art because their parents are able to pay their way through their studying, and working class people traditionally feel the need, or not the need, but feel they had to go into a trade or study something that they're likely to get a job in creative industries, especially right now. Freelance work and freelancers got it really hard right now. So I think studying the art is always seen as like a self-exploration for like a kind of middle class.
Yeah, I really agree. I'm very lucky to be Scottish and have grown up here because I've been given a free education, and I've tried to make the most out of that. But if I had have had to pay like £9,000 a year to go and study uni, I don't think I would have been able to do it. That's a really good point.
I think the difficulty with creative industries, and I'm just gonna blanket this statement by saying I don't work in a creative industry. I'm a practitioner psychologist in sports psychology, so it's way less creative sounding. But you're right, not everybody can afford to go to art school, and you put yourself through art school, and art students work similar sort of hours to medics, lawyers, dental students, psychology students. I know I was in art school. I know I was at university for a lot less hours than Eleanor was at dance school, even when I was doing my master's, because I was part of a mainstream discipline. But once you qualify and once you produce your work and you put it out into the world, there's still, I think to this day, an overwhelming idea that art is a luxury. It's not a necessity. So you've spent years, putting yourself through uni, or not, but putting yourself through training, giving yourself credibility, skills training, whatever. You birth this piece, be it a play or a painting or a novel or whatever it is, and people go, well, I've still got bills to pay at the end of the month. So actually, I'm not going to invest in that because for me, that's a luxury. Or you come from a working class background and you're putting on stuff that is maybe designed to get more people from working class backgrounds into creative fields. And there's this expectation that you must also do it for free because it's for the people. So it doesn't matter that you still have bills to pay. The rich don't need to see art as a luxury and they can pay for it. But anybody else who might be struggling to make ends meet, art will remain a luxury to them. Even arguably for the people who become artists. I feel there needs to be a change in how people view art, that is even art that's there for art's sake. What's the difference between a sculptor and somebody who comes from generations worth of potters from the Northwest, people that worked in ceramics factories? Or what's the difference between somebody who makes clothes for fashion versus somebody who works in a mill? And yeah, that's my little 2 cents on that. Sorry.
No, it was fab. And I think they're all fantastic points. I think they're all important points. People such as Keith Haring there was another part of his bio on the website that had said that he referred to the subway as his laboratory for working out his ideas. So he was kind of, as Emma and Laura and Jade said, is kind of right, where is the niche? Let's go there and let's experiment. And people can see that on their way to work and on their commute. And people such as Keith Haring have made it possible for the generation after to really see how you can express yourself freely, express yourself with truth, and also use his artistic talents and hard work as an activism tool to, as Jay had mentioned, raise awareness for HIV and the AIDS epidemic, and continue that work now even decades after his death. So I thank you to Jay for putting together that wee presentation, and thanks to everyone who shared their points there. Anyone who wants to watch the Keith Haring documentary, it can still be found in BBC iPlayer, and it's called Street Art Boy. And we can hopefully share a wee link about that after this session's finished. And with that said, I think it's time for the weather. Girl.
It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men.
Always gives you a wee laugh. Yes, first up on tonight's weather report. So there has been reports of teeny tiny rainbows popping up all across households over the UK. This is due to virtual prides being screened for the first time across the country, including Dundee's one last week. That was very, very exciting. Whilst it's not exactly the full rainbow experience we had intended, the virtual screenings have arguably brought some new energy, revitalised some of the artistic expression behind Pride, and still been able to let people feel prideful and joyful, even if they're in their own home. Next up, we have a big old sunshine. There she is. Hello. There's been massive sunshine across Manchester this week as screenwriter Russell T Davies has announced there will be a brand new LGBTQ+ support centre for LGBT+ youth due to open in the coming years. He's saying that this centre is vital for providing safety, support, friendship and laughter to LGBTQ+ people, particularly young people, in this vital time, but surely in the vital times to come as well. And finally, we've got some wee rain cloud raging. There is continuous drizzling over bisexual people within our community. Whilst some might argue drizzling's not quite as bad as a full-on thunderstorm, anyone who's experienced this drizzle will say that it can cause just as much disruption as a full-on lightning and thunder. And that was the weather. Girl. Now, when we chat about the issues that bisexual folks in our community are facing, I think that's something that needs a bit of a deeper dive than a simple weather report. So it's going to be part of our deep dive current affairs, or as we like to call them, our Raisin Liaisons. So, for our Raisin Liaisons, i.e. our current affairs, this is where we look at a political issue or a social issue and decide to try and unpick it in less time than we have to make a cup of tea. So with the LGBTQ+ community, we've got the L and we've got the G, and people know exactly what that is and what that means. When it comes to the T and the Q+, there's a little bit of confusion, but that's something that tends to be given some sort of attention, not always positive, but at least it's spoken about. However, some could say that the B is almost forgotten, and it's often not included by some when we're talking about issues that LGBTQ+ people face. Whilst bisexuality is a valid sexual orientation, it can occasionally be subject to fetishization by people and viewed by some, not all but some, as a stepping stone to being gay. Some folks who are bisexual feel that they're maybe not always taken seriously, both out with the community as well as inside the community. And according to Stonewall statistics about LGBT plus health in Britain, the mental health of folks who are bisexual is not always as good as we would want it to be, with 72% of bi women experiencing anxiety. And when asked the question, has anyone felt like life was not worth living, 50% of bi women and 43% of bi men said that that was how they felt. So as members and supporters of this community, we feel like that's something that needs to be addressed. These assumptions and attitudes can be damaging and hurtful, and there are two special guests that are here to talk about some of these attitudes that they may have experienced or know that others have experienced. We have got the fabulous Emma and the fabulous Laura joining us today. So Emma, I'll come to you first, since you're on the left-hand side of my screen, that's who I'm reading. Just give us a chat about who you are, how you identify, and any issues that you would like to raise around biphobia and bi erasure. Yeah.
I'm muted, sorry. Hi, I'm Emma and I don't know how to work a computer apparently. I am bisexual and I'm a theatre maker. And my camera's over here, my screen's there, so I'll talk into the camera for a bit. In terms of bi erasure, I think that this is something that's happened to me quite a lot in my life. There have been times where I've been like in a group of friends, for example, and someone else has worn like Doc Martens and a shirt or whatever, and they've been like, "Ah, you're the gay friend now," and I'm like, "It's me. I'm the gay friend." And it's even just now erasing myself by saying like I'm the gay friend. There was like a meme that I saw earlier that was, you know, the kind of girlfriend who's like looking appalled at her boyfriend checking out another girl, and it was the other girl just has calling myself gay, and then the other one is me, a bisexual. So yeah, I relate to that a lot, and I think I'm quite feminine presenting, and bisexuals, we don't have as much of a kind of identifying look almost as kind of your stereotypical portrayal of lesbians or gay men might do. So for example, when I've been in a nightclub, in a gay club, I've been threatened by a lesbian for looking too straight. And on the other side of things, I've just been in a music venue, like getting to know a girl, and a guy has kind of taken that as an invitation to like join in almost. At which again, I laughed in his face and said, "Can't you see we're gay?" Which again, erasing myself, but it was easier sometimes. It's easier somehow saying that you're gay than saying that you're bisexual. It's less explanation. I could go down this rabbit hole for hours, but
Might need to do a bi erasure, the sequel. That's, I think what you're saying there, Emma, is something that many people will identify with. Laura, same kind of question, tell us a bit about who you are, how you identify, and any experiences that you'd wish to share with us.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm a sports psychologist, sport and exercise psychologist technically in training, which is a super interesting sounding job, but it basically involves me watching a lot of sport and talking a lot about feelings. So I identify as bisexual. I have also both currently and in the past identified quite comfortably as fluid, and for a while I flirted with the idea of identifying as pansexual, but I didn't, solely on the grounds that I disagree with bisexual being seen as a binary thing. My takeaway of bisexual is it's a yes and identity. It's not a or identity. So to put it in really simple terms, heterosexuality is I like men or women, but not both. Homosexuality is I like men or women, but not both. Bisexuality for me is arguably what some people would label pansexuality as. It's I like men and women and, you know, whatever. And I think, and this is going to maybe make me sound like such an old grandma now, but somewhere along the way this changed and nobody gave me the heads up about it. Like somewhere along the way everything became really focused on pinpointing where you are on a scale, and I was maybe so out of that conversation that I didn't even know that there was a scale that we needed to put ourselves on. That being said, sexuality isn't a choice, but living your sexuality and being open about it to whatever degree that you are open about your sexuality, that is a choice. And I think in the eyes of a lot of people within and outside of the LGBTQ plus community, bisexuality is viewed as a series of choices. It is your choice to come out if you are in a relationship that experiences heterosexual passing privilege. It is your choice to remain bisexual if you are in a homosexual appearing relationship within the community. It is your choice to keep reminding people when they refer to you as straight or gay that actually, no, you're neither or both or whatever. You know, it is a series of choices that you keep having to make, and that is, it's quite frankly sometimes quite exhausting, particularly when you're also met with this feeling or argument or sense that your choices are irrelevant because your whole identity as a construct doesn't exist. It's just this weird limbo mid-ground of, you know, whatever. And very much as Emma was saying, you know, I think for a lot of people, part of identity is how that identity is performed. We have a bisexual bob. I say this now with somebody who's not had a haircut in a year and a bit, that's like maybe verging on too far gone from the bisexual bob. I've had hair that's anywhere from here down to, you know, past boob length. So it's, bisexuality cannot be performed as an identity. We don't have a code, we don't have a dress sense, we don't have a secret language, we don't have hand gestures to one another to signify like, oh, yep, no, I also fancy more than one gender. So it can't be reduced to that. It's so much more than just a series of psychological, biological, social signals that we put out into the ether that lets other attractive people know we might be into them, and we don't really care what's in somebody's pants.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, the way that you explained that is fab. Anyone wish to make a rebuttal or agree or disagree?
Just saying, I think Laura, you put it so much better than I did there. Like so precise. And as well, the whole kind of the decisions, the constant decisions to kind of not just, because for a long time I thought that gender was associated with sexuality, and the reason that I think a lot of bisexual people maybe take a little bit longer to realise that they are bisexual is this assumption that, oh, if I'm attracted to men, for example, then that's it. And if I always thought like, oh, if I had been born a boy, I would be attracted to women because that's just the way that gender works. And I remember having this conversation like as a primary school child with my friends being like, if you were born a different gender or a different assigned sex, then how, like, who would you fancy? And they'd be like, I would still fancy boys or whatever. And I'd be like, I don't think that's right, because my experience of just not having this kind of gender sense of who I found attractive or who I fancied it was just so alien to me. And then that's what I thought everyone was like. And then it wasn't until later that I was like, bisexuality, that's a thing? Is that allowed? Can I do that?
It's the classic trope as well, I find, of like, wait, I was going to call it a lesbian trope, but that doesn't feel too inclusive. Women who are interested in other women trope of, do I fancy this girl? Do I just want her wardrobe? Or do I actually want to like cut her open, hollow her out and wear her as a skin? Like, that's how into her I am. I get that with men and with women. Like, do I fancy them? Do I just want to dress like them? Or do I legitimately want to embody this person? And I've always identified as cisgender. This is the thing. I'm not non-binary, but my whole life I've been given this label of tomboy. And for me, that was enough to feel like, well, you know, yeah, I'm a girl because that's a label that feels right to me, but I'm not a girly girl. And I think when you start sexuality and gender, it's like it's Venn diagrams. They're separate, they're together, it's all messy and blurry. We can't have entirely separate conversations about them because there is too much of a crossover, but equally we can't constantly be expecting that just because you shoot down the middle in terms of who you want to take home or who you want to be in a monogamous or even non-monogamous relationship with, that you must also be totally confused or straight down the middle in terms of how you identify in your gender or beyond that, your gender presentation. Like, I feel like it's also this real bisexual trope, particularly for female bisexuals, that we must all have short androgynous haircuts, but be like makeup artist levels of being able to feminize ourselves on top of that, and have like cute little butch suits, but also perfect, perky little boobs, and be able to. And I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not sure I even know what the tropes for bisexual men are, because there is even less accurate representation of them out anywhere. Like, I don't even want to speculate on what the equivalent tropes for men are, because I would be speaking from a total place of ignorance. I assume the reality is that they're exactly the same as bisexual women or bisexual people who don't identify as men and women. We just all bound by one particular gender and who we fancy. That's it. That's the experience. It's the only thing that unites all of us. That and the increased risk of poor mental health. But you know, those are about the two only things that we all share in common. Fair enough.
I actually I googled. I'm working on a theatre show in very early stages about bisexuality, and I was looking at characters that are portrayed in.
Sorry, I don't understand.
all right, Google.
Even Siri's trying to erase you there, Emma. Get her tilt.
I know, literally, and I'm not even safe in my own bedroom. Christ. But I was looking up characters who were kind of portrayed as bisexual, and most of these characters, they're not even mentioned that they are bisexual. Like Willow in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she's in a relationship with a man for seasons, and it goes on, and it's like there's no question that they are attracted to each other, that they are in love, and then one day Willow meets a woman and they fall in love, and then suddenly she's a lesbian, and like bisexuality doesn't even come into it. Like Piper in Orange is the New Black, she has relationships with men and with women, and the word bisexual is never, like, it doesn't come into it. And then when you look at the list of bisexual characters, like 85% of them are women, and men are less likely to identify as bisexual as well. And I think that does come down to it being that women are kind of more accepted because we are fetishized. That gives us a license to be shown and performed, whereas it's not seen as like a good sexy thing for a man to be, which I think is awful. And like, if you look at statistics, and in the whole population of Scotland, 11.5% of women have had a same-sex experience, and 8% of men have had a same-sex experience. And only, I think, 2.6% of Scotland identify as LGB. So I think we're a lot queerer than we'd like to admit in Scotland. Everyone's a little bit gay.
And that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Certainly, just when you're both chatting there, some really fantastic points. We have our LGBTQ plus support worker and fabulous German correspondent, Eleanor Walker, has put together a little bit of a presentation about bisexuality. So Eleanor, if you're ready, I would like to pass on to you to share some of your thoughts as well.
Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you very much, Alex. My name's Eleanor, and I'm here to give you a super quick breakdown of bisexuality. So if you were to ask someone how they would define bisexuality, it's quite likely that their answer will differ from the next person you ask. The simplest answer may be that bisexuality is a broad and inclusive term that describes physical attraction, romantic attraction, or sexual behaviour that is not limited to one sex. The resource site bi.org talks of bisexuality as an umbrella term that covers other labels, such as the ones that Laura mentioned, pansexuality, polysexual, or simply fluid in attraction. Some people also see human sexuality as a continuum, coming from the Kinsey scale, where one end is purely same-sex attraction and the other end is purely different sex attraction. From this, some people would say that bisexuality is anywhere in between. Bi.org also emphasizes that the fact that if people are bisexual, it doesn't mean they are attracted to everyone, merely that bi people's attractions aren't limited by sex or gender, and it's a label that can be used by anyone regardless of sex or gender identity. The bisexual flag is made up of a pink, blue, and a purple stripe, and was first unveiled in 1998. The pink stripe represents same-sex attraction, the blue represents attraction to the opposite sex, and the purple represents the combination of the two and attraction to people of all genders. Famous bisexual people today include actress Drew Barrymore, comedian Joel Isaac, boxer Nicola Adams, American football player Connor Mertens, and singer-songwriters Bjork, Frank Ocean, and Jason Mraz. Historically, there's a lot of evidence that would indicate there are other historical figures that are bisexual. For example, it is believed that the ancient Grecian king, Alexander the Great, was also bisexual, with marriages to 3 women and a long-standing presumed romance with his friend and bodyguard. Other more recent figures presumed to be bisexual include the poet Lord Byron, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, artist Frida Kahlo, playwright Tennessee Williams, singer, dancer, and activist Josephine Baker, writer Virginia Woolf, and fashion designer Oscar de la Renta. Now, bisexuality is something to definitely be celebrated, and I just want to thank our special guests, Emma and Laura, again for coming on this week to talk about their experiences. If you ever want to look at any further information, or if you need any help or advice, I have added some links here, and all I can say is bye for now.
Thanks so much, Eleanor. That part there about having a long-standing relationship with friend or bodyguard, I think that is an encapsulating bisexual experience.
It's when you're gal pals, basically, isn't it? It's the male equivalent of gal pals. No, I'm just his bodyguard. Don't worry about it.
Just my best friend that I take to weddings and funerals and go on short weekends away to Lochloman. Don't worry about it.
We've got a joint mortgage.
Get a joint mortgage and a cat. Yeah. Thanks so much, Eleanor. That was, yes, really, I like to think of myself as being a bit of an expert about bisexuality. Clearly I'm not. Just to quickly then pass on to studio audience one last time, I'll come one by one, just any final thoughts about Bi Pride and why it should be celebrated in your mind. So I'll just go left to right. Emma-Lynn Hadley, why should bisexuality be celebrated and be prideful?
Because I think it's so hard to be visible that I think it is important to be proud of who you are, because if you don't shout about it, everyone is going to assume like you're kind of one way or the other, depending on like the gender of your partner at the time or the way that you present. So it's really important to be proud.
Love it. Laura, same question.
I really feel like bisexual people as a group occupy this unique space in which heterosexual allies and other members of the LGBTQ plus community see us as having a foot in both doors. And sometimes that's tiring, but other times it gives us this magical, unique bisexual power to be able to make a real difference and facilitate real change and foster real growth and understanding and new relationships, politically, socially, within communities. And that only happens if we exist in the first place. So it's on us as a group to shout about how important we are and how valued we should be, because we can, you know, return that favor by being able to represent this group of people who maybe often aren't understood all the way, but have a lot that they can really offer communities. And plus, we find everybody sexy. If you're ever having a bad day, I mean, we don't. Everyone is unique, but
everyone has the possibility to be sexy.
Everyone has the potential to be sexy. If you want to compliment, find a bisexual.
I think that should be on a t-shirt. If you want to compliment, find a bisexual. Anna, same question.
I think it's very important that bi people realize that they're bi and find that community, because I'm bi and I'm in a relationship with a man, and I have been for the past 9 years, and I'm happy. But there's this whole community with people who have the same struggles or that can help me, and we can help each other realize that actually it's okay that I go somewhere and I find someone else, a woman, attractive, but I'm not limited to the relationship that I've chosen. And finding that community is so important for your identity. So I think that's why it's so important that we just stand up for that, because it's very easy to raise yourself as well.
Love it. That's really beautiful. And finally, last but not least, Jay, same question.
Even though I don't identify as bisexual, but as a gay man, I know that bisexual people are erased by gay men and are gay women. And I think it's so important for bi people to have an independent celebration, to know that they are valued and that this erasure can't really continue and it needs to be addressed.
I love that. Thank you so much. With everything that's been chatted about, I think it's clear that, to sum up, bisexuality is completely valid, and it's an important illustration in the rich tapestry of LGBTQ plus history and current culture. But clearly, speaking to everyone, even just the few folks in our meeting tonight, in our studio audience tonight, everyone has different experiences, and whether it's attracting to someone regardless of their gender or a specific interest in more towards leaning towards one side than the other, it's just too complex and it's too different for every single individual to totally nail down. And it's the same even for heterosexual folks and people who identify as gay. That doesn't mean you're going to be attracted to every single person of the same gender. So it's exactly the same. I think, just as you've all mentioned, it's not quite in the forefront maybe of people's minds. So if we really make sure that we are visible and that we celebrate our LGBT plus siblings, then hopefully that should mean that everyone gets to understand our fluidity and our belief in love. And if you were affected by any issues relating to bisexuality and particularly mental health, there is an LGBT helpline Scotland that you can contact. Again, we can link that after the session's finished tonight. And you can also contact Breathing Space as well, which are both free helplines. So to sum up, we caper conclusion. There we go, that's the one. Thank you so much to everyone joining us tonight on our Zoom studio audience and also joining us on Facebook, and of course those who are catching up with us later on as well. Thank you to Eleanor for putting together that presentation there, learning a lot. Thank you so much to Emma, Laura and Jay for your contributions. If you would like to join in with more stuff that Shaper Caper's up to, we have got a free mindfulness class running every Friday at 4 p.m. If you're interested in that, you can DM us and we will send you the details. That's a free mindfulness every Friday at 4 p.m. A big massive thanks to everyone who's joining once more, and we will be back with this version of the In Out Crowd on the 24th of August. And one last time, big thank you to the National Lottery Community Fund and their players for allowing these sessions to be possible. That's it from me. You stay classy, LGBT.